Hello, Westminster. This is Thursday's midday meditation. This coming Sunday is Transfiguration Sunday, so I thought we could reflect a little bit on the theme of Transfiguration from the Gospel according to Mark. So it's Mark 9 to through verse 9. So throughout my seminary years and a little after I graduated, I worked as a flight attendant. It was a very challenging job, physically challenging, especially those early morning flights and late night flights. Yet one of my favorite moments of all of those years of flying was when we are landing at sunrise. So you're flying over the clouds, and then when you get close to the clouds and the sun is starting to rise, and you can actually see the rays because you're in the clouds. You can actually see the sun sending its first rays of light just parallel to the earth, and they just like the light seems to be trapped in the clouds. The colors and everything about it, and suddenly you're like caught in between lights and colors and clouds. Clouds look like they're lit on fire. And despite the fatigue of an overnight flight, this view often would just renew my energy. And for a few moments, I'd forget all about how tiring it is and just think how lucky I am to get to experience such a wonderful and awe inspiring natural phenomenon. Today, the closest I get to such a view is when I'm hiking or even camping, and when we're on top of a mountain, closer to the clouds, watching sunset or sunrise. There must be something about that combination of clouds, light, and sunshine when they all come together. Um, and no wonder Jesus chose these elements to transfigure to his disciples on top of a mountain. So, Transfiguration is one of those supernatural events that are recorded in the gospel, like the resurrection and the ascension would be other examples. And usually, stories of such events are very brief, and specifically in Mark, just reflecting the mysterious nature of those events and the author or the evangelist's inability to understand or describe what had just happened. I know that this is hard for us as Presbyterians because we tend to be all about explanations and answers and, just try to make sense of what we believe. Um, I think that other traditions may have less of a problem embracing the mysterious. So bear with me. Um, there are actually so many interpretations that will not shy away from diving into the mystery of the event. It remains hard for us to understand exactly what had happened. Is it a glimpse of heaven, a vision, a clear and sure experience of God's very nature? We don't know. Um, but we know that the moment was so intense that the disciples fell on their faces with fear. uh, Peter is the only one who speaks, of course, typical Peter. Um, and he was startled and just didn't know what to say or do. So he starts to mumble about tents and about what he can do to make the experience last longer. So now Peter wants to participate in it. He doesn't want to just sit and watch. Um, And I often identify with Peter, also with other sides of his personality, but I think in general, we are like Peter, desperate for an unending experience of the divine. We're desperate for transfiguration, for God's transformation of our societies, of the world, and of the evil and the sin that rule our lives as humans. So, Whether or not I'm not gonna go into the historicity of the story, whether we believe something happened or the whole thing was just a creation of the imagination of the first church. It remains true that we all yearn for holy moments, for those moments of transcendence and closeness to God. Just like those few moments after a long flight or hike when the mystery of creation just catches me in awe and wonder. Those moments are often what stay with us. Um, but the truth remains that those moments are just that, moments. Just as quickly as it started, the mountaintop experience has ended. We're told that Moses and Elijah disappeared, and the disciples looked up and saw no one except Jesus. This time they weren't dazzled or terrified. Soon Jesus returns them back to where they were. Um, though not to go back and be the same, but now with power driven from what they've seen and experienced from the God who can and will indeed change and transform their lives and others' lives through them. Uh, Unfortunately, we don't hear from Mark about how that left the disciples, how that experience have shaped them. But I tend to think that the oracles of the disciples later in the Acts and what they did, it has something to do with the power that they themselves have experienced. Pastor West will call this experience, I forgot the title of his sermon actually, but it's like a preview. I think it's preview to the resurrection. So I'm just like trying in my own head to imagine how, we never hear ever about uh, them telling anyone about this experience or how it left them. So that just remains for us to kind of imagine. So like the disciples, we may experience God with immediacy and with clarity at some points. And I know I've heard stories from some people, but most of life is not moments like this. And like the disciples, we always just find ourselves back to the place where we were, the place that we know, the regular, the ordinary, our daily lives. But these are the places that are in need of God's transformation. I know that change is hard. It's hard for us humans in general. However, in light of COVID-19, the church is finally realizing that urgent urge to change in order to keep up with all the transformation that is already taking place in the culture around us. But we try to ignore it for a little bit, but now we're kind of forced to face the changes. Um, and the church is realizing that the old model isn't working anymore. We're learning that our call is not for the survival of the institution, but to be witnesses, to be agents of transformation that will actually make a difference in people's lives. So we are in desperate need to change the appearance of our church. Um, Not this church, our church with a big C, so we can rediscover how we can be witnesses. In other words, the church is being called for transfiguration. So, friends, whatever you take from this story, remember that transfiguration just invites us to rethink who we are and rethink our place in the world. We live in a mystery, in a cloud of unknowing, and as Pastor West said in his sermon, we are very uncomfortable with mystery. We don't like it. There is fear of the unknown, and within this ambiguous mystery that we're all living in, there are moments when we glimpse the holy, but our calling is to make holy the rest of those regular moments and to be that transformation that our culture and our church need. So here's the thing, we know that the whole world is held in God's hand, and God is already at work, transfiguring and transforming lives. And that does not depend on us, by the way. It doesn't depend on our actions. We cannot stop the work of the Spirit. But whether or not we choose to be part of this transformation, I think this is the decision that we are faced with today. Um, I think it's time for me to cut it. I'm starting to preach here. Um, so I just invite you to make your decision today. Are we going to choose to be a part of the transformation that's already happening around us? May we all come near God and shine. Thank you for listening.